let's start with the reigning champion squad. Jake, what's different about the kind of new, kind of not new Mercedes W12?
There's not a massive amount on it that's entirely new. The overall bargeboard package. Last year, they played around with the specification quite a lot last year. They came up with one package, and then for the Belgian Grand Prix, they shifted it back a little bit. And at the time, it looked like it was more of a specification for perhaps low downforce circuits, but it's something they continued with through the rest of the season. But it seems that they've sort of gone forward with it again, and I wonder if that's a legacy of these floor changes as well. It seems to be a lot of teams are trying to work air a lot earlier, so the floor, because it has less tools with which to do the job, they're trying to get that outwash, if you like, done earlier to ensure the diffuser's nice and clean and works as it should. So there's that, and there's a few changes to the side pods and bodywork as well. As you'll have probably noticed from the launch images, there's quite a big bulge on the side of the car, and that is a legacy of the new powertrain package, which I'll go into a minute as well. But it just looks like they've tightened everything up, and obviously we know that W11 was possibly F1's fastest car, contender for perhaps F1's greatest car considering its dominance, and this is just aiming to not eclipse that per se, but be every little bit its equal.
Well, Mercedes technical director James Allison was part of their virtual launch at their Brackley race bays today, and he actually outright said it, Mercedes are hiding things, Jake. So what is he referring to there when he says that?
Well, first of all, it's nice that someone's honest about hiding things on a launch car. We don't get that a lot, I guess. But he's talking about the floor, of course. As I've mentioned before, for 2021, there's these brand new floor regulations where a big triangular cutout has been taken from the floor, and so the teams have a lot less to work with getting that underbody downforce. And Mercedes is not prepared to reveal its hand just yet, because, as we know, Mercedes is a team that's always been fantastic at developing solutions for any given challenge, really, with regards to the rules. And so I think they know that they've got a good idea for it, and they don't want teams to copy it. James Allison said that it buys them a couple more weeks before teams start looking at their design and perhaps trying to slot it in the wind tunnel. So quite a smart move from them.
And what about the Mercedes powertrain? You mentioned the engine earlier on, Jake. I mean, it's always quite a big topic. Teams are only allowed to make one major change this year. We know Ferrari going to be a lot of attention paid to what it can do with its latest engine after its troubles last year. Honda, of course, aiming to head off into the sunset on a high with Red Bull. What about Mercedes? We know that they did encounter some early problems in testing, saved really by the extra time the pandemic afforded them. So what were the team sort of hinting at in regards to that situation today?
Well, we don't know the scope of the internals, but they say they've got some very, very innovative solution. Words of new engine chief Hal Thomas, who has come in and replaced Andy Cowell, who has left the team. There are a few slight changes to the engine regulations in that they're going to be 5 kilograms heavier because, on cost reasons, F1 wants to eliminate some exotic materials. So there's got to be a few changes with that regard. But yeah, they're very, very bullish about that new engine. I know that they've said that they've had encountering a few issues here and there, but James Allison said, the new unit's got more horsepower than the old one, and it should be. Mercedes have created excellent powertrains every single year in the hybrid era, so there's no reason to suggest that this won't be another one.
Well, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas and Toto Wolff faced the media in a string of Zoom calls after the virtual launch took place. John, Luke, what did we learn from those? Let's start with Lewis Hamilton, John. Did we learn anything more about his future? Are we any closer to knowing how things are going to pan out for Lewis Hamilton post-2021 and his current one-year deal?
Yeah, I think we got a slight step forward in what kind of we understand about their contract. That Toto had said over the winter that the delay in sorting it, thanks to COVID, the late finish of the season, meant that there wasn't time to sort out a long-term deal. But Lewis said today it was his choice to do a one-year deal. Doesn't see the need, in a time when the world's changed quite a bit, doesn't see the need for a long-term deal. So it seems it was something Lewis wanted. It seems it's something Lewis is quite happy with. It seems if Lewis wants to carry on, it'll probably be another one-year deal and a one-year deal after that. And it kind of leaves Mercedes in an interesting spot because you see Ferrari committing long-term to Charles Leclerc. You see Red Bull committing long term to Max Verstappen. So, the top teams commit themselves around a big superstar for the long term. Mercedes hasn't got that luxury. Lewis is out of contract at the end of this year. Valtteri's out of contract at the end of this year. So, it's almost incredible that the potentially best car on the grid has 2 vacancies for 2022. And you can bet that Toto, cannot afford to sit back and, be confident that both drivers would be there for the long-term future. Get to September, October, and suddenly Lewis says, "Oh no, I've had enough. I'm going," and everyone else is locked up. So it's going to be fascinating to see where the movement goes. Toto says they won't flirt with other drivers before they've spoken to Lewis and Valtteri, but I bet that won't stop other drivers flirting with Toto.
As I said, Valtteri Bottas also facing the media today. Did we pick up any clues into how he might be going ahead of the 2021 season?
Well, yeah, he's in a really good place by the sounds of things. He used the word perfect to describe how his winter was, and he said that he was able to spend a lot of time away. He said he did some quite extreme training, he called it. He wanted to channel the Finnish sisu, that Finnish mentality that is so hard for anyone who's from anyone anywhere else to crack, really. And he said that he's worked hard and he spent a lot of time over the winter working on his mental state. And he said that basically he wanted to try and make it so he was more consistent across the course of the season. This never-ending quest, it seems like, to defeat Lewis Hamilton in a title fight, and he's I'm sure he's very bored of all the headlines that the likes of the 4 of us come up with about Bottas version 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever. And he just said, I just need to be more consistent. He said, I just need to work on the sort of mental side of things to unlock that sort of extra bit of performance that I perhaps been lacking at points this year. And he spoke quite openly about it. And I asked him, I said, are you working with a mind coach or anything? Because we know it's something that Lando Norris has done very effectively. A lot of elite athletes do it. And that was the only point where he sort of clammed up during the whole media session. And he said, well, I don't really want to talk about it. And it's not something I really want to share sort of techniques or anything like that. But he said that he ultimately, the man he's got to face about any shortcomings he's had against Lewis Hamilton is the man in the mirror. And he said he doesn't want to be looking back on anything that's happened in the past, that he's very much focused on this season. He's still very confident that he can defeat Lewis Hamilton in a title fight. And he said that he's really raring to go for the new campaign. So there was definitely a spring in his step. I think just following his Instagram really over the winter, you can see he's had quite a nice break, sort of split between Finland and Monaco, and doing a lot of cycling by the looks of things. And he seems to be in a really good place, which is good. But then again, we've said this, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years, that every year, we're going to get Bottas, he's going to come back stronger, come back better. And again, you just got to wonder, is it actually going to be enough to defeat Lewis Hamilton across the course of a championship fight?
Let's go on to the most visible and potentially contentious element of every team launch, and that's what their livery's going to be for the coming year. Luke, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down on the Mercedes livery? Or thumbs sideways?
No, I'll give it a thumbs up, I think. I think I'm going to go the other way to you guys. I think it's, actually a pretty nice design. I thought it was really futuristic. I think the way they've kept the sort of Petronas luminous green, I thought was really, really cool. And I actually quite like sort of the fade effect towards the back. And, okay, maybe a few too many AMG logos, but the way it sort of fades into the silver, I think is quite nice. I really like the numbering as well, just like the big 44 and 77 that you've got on the back of the car as well. I just think it's a really futuristic livery, and I think that the shots that Mercedes released towards the end of the day of the physical car in the race bay, that did a lot more for me than the initial renders. So I'm a fan of this. I think that it's maybe a little bit too much going on, but actually I think that's quite cool. It's quite futuristic, and I think it's, for me, up there as one of the better liveries that we've seen in this launch season.
Anyway, moving on to the next part of our discussion, we've again asked our social media followers to vote on how they see the 2021 season playing out for Mercedes, and here are the results on that, to a series of set questions, and obviously I'll ask you guys for your opinion as well. In terms of which driver scores more points, it's fairly comprehensive, as I'm sure you'd imagine, victory for one of the Mercedes drivers given his very successful history. On Instagram, 91% think Lewis Hamilton has scored more points and just 9% to Valtteri Bottas. Twitter is even more comprehensive, 95% for Hamilton and 5% for Bottas. So effectively, Luke, I'm coming to you, is Hamilton the favourite of the two Mercedes drivers to do better in 2021?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's probably out of all the teammate partnerships on the grid, I think it's the one that's probably the safest bet that Lewis Hamilton is gonna win that. I think he's only twice lost in his career across the course of a season to a teammate. No matter how much Bottas may have improved himself or be working on his mental state or anything like that, to defeat the driver who statistically is the greatest of all time, it's going to take something monumental.
Well, next question was, will Mercedes take an 8th consecutive Constructors title this season? On Instagram, 86% of people said yes and just 14% no, whereas Twitter, again, more comprehensive, 93% saying yes and just 7% saying no. So, John, effectively the question is Mercedes once again the favourite heading into 2021?
I mean, I can't see... I think the only team that could potentially challenge them for race wins regularly is Red Bull, and I don't see enough change in the regulations and kind of step forward from Honda on the engine front against what progress Mercedes has made. And on the chassis front, you've got, Mercedes are, up there as Red Bull were once kind of aero kings, but I think that's no longer the case because Mercedes are just as good on that front.
The next question was the Hamilton-Bottas partnership. Is it made in heaven or hell? On Instagram, we've got 62% voting for heaven and just 38% voting for hell. And on Twitter, slight difference, 68% voting for heaven and 32% voting for hell. Luke, do you agree with that? Do you think it's basically an ideal partnership Mercedes have got in its driver lineup?
Completely. I don't know who's voting for hell on that front because there's never been a bad word between the two of them. I think even today Bottas was sort of talking about being a bit more demanding, maybe a bit more selfish sort of with his team. But I mean, between him and Lewis Hamilton, it's been, I think, the perfect partnership really. I think that Lewis has been able to do all that he wants to do and he's been very successful. And at no point has he ever lost a race or anything like that because of Valtteri Bottas not being there for him, which is something that obviously Max Verstappen has struggled with in the past couple of years. But he's I think it's a great partnership. I think that's probably the big consideration for Mercedes moving forward, is do they want to sort of upset the apple cart and change anything within this really, really strong partnership between Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. So I think it's probably, out of the whole grid, I would say it's probably the most heavenly of inter-team partnerships perhaps.
Indeed. Well, John, Luke, JBL, thank you very much for your thoughts today. But what did you guys make of the new Mercedes? Let us know in the comments below.